Okay, prep for October 28th, 2020, and also go over some trades made and why they were made the day before. Can this now be on top? That sucks. Alright, so to start off, SNMP, why I thought it was a good short and how it looked. Looking on the daily, it has a huge wick clearly indicated in the selling, so even though it put in at 1.6, it really just kept going down and there was no interest. So looking at the 5-minute, it popped up a little higher, put in a 1.4, and that looked good and great. And the point was, that's another wick at a lower level. Bag holders are unloading, and it's a good short. The only problem is that I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and most of the move had already happened. My intention would have been to short under revap at 1:30 and under the resistance break, but I wasn't going to short something that's sitting on EMAs and is putting in higher lows. So I drew this trend line, and once it broke the trend line and put in a recognizable top, I was interested in a short, especially because if you look over here, plenty of overhead volume, and now it's selling off. So all these people are stuck and they're gonna have stop losses that get cleared out, especially as well 7 a.m. New back holders are able to sell on different platforms that don't open until 7 a.m. such as Thinkorswim, TD Ameritrade, a bunch of other big names. And then looking at trend quality, I mean, this thing, the positive trend died, and this would have been my short. But again, I woke up 30 minutes too late. So then the idea was to short at 7, but at the same time, I got a pop on one of my scanners for something that looked safer. SNMP, as I identified, was not very safe because they have a tiny float. What was their float? Let me check this route. I forget. It was a few million. It just 5 million float, and so with any type of volume, they could be easily manipulated into going back up. So yeah, the short setup was there. I had my sequence counter saying that the bullish perspective is finishing. So as soon as it drops under the EMA or under revap, essentially it's no longer bullish. But again, woke up too late, I missed it, and at 7 a.m. I got another pop, and I completely pivoted because MGEN immediately, if you look on the daily how this looks, well, this looks a lot safer. This has put in multiple tops, multiple higher tops, versus with the other one we only had a few tops put in. I mean, this thing is just a complete trash. We have huge sell-off at 2, rejected. Then we had multiple sell-offs with high volume at 1.61. So we already know the expectation is this thing is not going to go past 1.61 because it keeps putting in big wicks on the daily, and below the wicks, I'm already thinking it's at least gonna stay under 1.45, 1.5. It's likely not gonna hit that even, because every single time back holders are going to think, oh my god, I'm so close to a better exit, and last time I didn't hit it, so let me just, because they look at it the same way. They're thinking, well, it might not, if it's a double top, it'll reverse, and it might not hit the double top. So it was a good setup. The big difference here, and the reason why I pivoted, is it has 55 million float, which is huge. Additionally, if you look over here, there's not even a newly created overhead. It's just continuous selling. And the reason why that happens is because this thing never gave an entry for anyone. This quick of a pop, you're talking a few, this is just algos that are able to trade this, and maybe like a few really fast people, but from 57 cents to 96 and then immediately to 1.4. Very few humans are going to catch this ride, and almost all of them are going to say, okay, well, this popped to basically last few resistance points. I don't expect this to go up any higher. I need a pullback before I go in. At the same time, bag holders want to sell. So essentially, there's no buyers, there's only sellers, and there's shorters. So sell, no buy. At the same time, way more shares. The float is much bigger, 55 million, hard to manipulate, much safer. And at the same time, you're looking at the price volume. It's negative the entire time, and you're looking at the standard deviation. It popped above 2.5. So as soon as this thing started going down, once the standard deviation move was over, I'll actually start looking for an entry while I was doing my research on the company. I'm noticing big wicks, so we put in the top, big wicks, and then on this next wick where we had green candles and it rejected and it didn't retest the previous resistance. At the same time, the standard deviation is going down, the trend is going down, and my arbitrary 10.5 that I have on here basically indicates how many people are buying, and I didn't see any buying from a technical standpoint due to that. So I shorted on here, and then I added to the short on the VWAP break, and on here I added more because it did not close above the VWAP, and that's basically how I look at it. I mean, yeah, it broke through, but all it did was put in another long wick. So on this next one, I think each time I added 2,000 shares, so 1.21, and then as it dropped, I covered at every interval on the open. So first I covered on this trendline break 1.1, and then the rest of it on this long-term support, and I actually didn't have any more. Then I had an add here that I actually missed because I had it set to 1.25, just above the volume, the most of the volume of the day that was so far recorded on my little thingies. It didn't fill, and I could have written this down much further, but risk and reward tells me not to do that. Later in the day, it popped up due to some hilarious manipulations. This thing popped on news of acquisition, and they said that this acquisition will be paid via stock issuance. So you have technical analysis indicating that there are resistance points that aren't being cleared, and you have news where they basically tell you that, yeah, we bought someone, but we have no money, and we need to issue 60 million shares because we only have 30 million. Or, I mean, in this case, they're issuing 91 million shares. So it's just $91 million. So I just think the news was misunderstood. And later on, it put in another recognizable support at this at 240, and that's a lower high, and that gave me all the credibility that this is continuing to short, and I was able to reshort it. So it was great to be able to do this move twice, and I'm holding it short into the morning, and I expect that I'll be holding it longer because once they announce the secondary offering, this thing will continue to drop for people who didn't understand what's going on. And actually a very similar thing, not really going to go over this for a long time, a very similar thing happened here. Dtmp, actually same situation, looking on the daily, it's complete garbaggio, has a super strong resistance at 0.27 because it just held it one time and then it tanked all the way to nothing, and then it put in, so that was my risk. So I'm thinking, all right, ideally 0.27, probably won't see that, so I missed this short at 0.23 because I'm not a freaking computer. But if you look back at MGEN and what my thought process was, it didn't clear the previous support, and once it put in the new support, I shorted just below it. So using the same logic, I'm going to Dtmp and I'm saying, okay, well, I missed this short, but I would like to short around the same spot. Ideally, MGEN had a bar over here. This one doesn't. And I just put in a short at 23 cents. It happened to fill on this pop right here. And I looked at it. I did not have to close it because it never hit 27, which would have been my stop loss. Or in this case, most likely just another ad because there's just too much overhead supply for this stock. And you can see really everything was being sold off. I should have covered into this drop right here, but Dtmp issued similar news. They also had an acquisition, and they said, we also have no money, and we're going to be issuing shares. So it was just the craziest thing, and I didn't feel like covering because I knew that it was going to drop. What I did instead was I added at 21 cents over here on this pop, and these guys actually issued shares that same day, and I covered all of it just above 15 cents for even bigger gains in MGEN, which is ironic because I spent almost no research on this compared to the other. So both trades went well, and now we're looking at the next stuff. There's quite a few things on. Oh, I don't want to make this too long, but boy oh boy. Okay, what I'm looking at is obviously MGEN. I'm looking for this thing to continue to flush out, and I think for this one I'll do a 5 minute. It really closed weak in the end. It's already below the 50 EMA. Kind of the same thing it did here. So yeah, potentially it could pop up, but I don't believe that to be the case because it's about to issue shares, and who in the hell would hold it? Additionally, you can see there is no trend up. Even with this move, the trend wasn't recognizable to even be above 20, and usually that's my threshold of when I consider it something of importance. So I will continue holding this short, and the next one that I'm the most interested in is actually UUU. This little guy actually cleared out and put in an all-time high. It's super low float, and so it could keep going. The trend is obviously positive, it's above 30, but the way that it cleared the new high is suspect. It did it in after hours, which means the volume is very low. Less than 1 million shares were traded after hours, so even with a float of only 1 million and 1.8 million float, it's not a convincing move because it was done while most people weren't able to trade. I mean, I'm able to move the stock price up and down by a few cents if it has no volume by just putting in bids and asks where I want. Basically, active investor said that this company sucks at being a company and they're going to do something about it. So potentially a merger, acquisition, or something else to create shareholder value. And it popped. You know, the news is basically saying we're going to do something. It's kind of weak. It's better than definitive news because doing something is speculative and it could be, oh, what is it? It could be so many things. And because it put an all-time high, this thing could keep going. So I'm actually looking at it both ways. I'm short bias on it a little bit because of the big wicks that it had on the daily on the last pop, and it has some wicks right now on the 5 minute on the new high, and it already broke down to below the previous daily resistance. So there actually might be some selling coming in, especially profit takers, bag holders that were stuck upside down. Because it's a super low float, if it's an actively traded share, if it puts in $1 million in pre-market and pulls back to something like above 3.3, above VWAP, retests it, yeah, I might be looking to go long on it. But at the same time, the risk reward is pretty good for the short thesis because it's under the resistance for the daily, and the news is crap. So if it's not actively traded, we put in a standard deviation of 1.5, which means a very irregular volume situation, and it popped like crazy on considerably low volume. MGEN had 265 million and it didn't even clear the previous highs, and that was during the day. This one just doubled on a letter that said we'll do something about being better. So I'm interested in going long if it has volume. I'm interested in going short if it stays below 4.1 and it is not the most active runner. The other one that I'm looking at, and you're gonna love this, it's this one company called SRRK. They crushed their performance indicators, and it's the second day that they're running. They're putting in new highs. I mean, daily's even pointless to look. It's just they're popping up. There was some volume inflection 25. He cleared that and he kept going. Then you have some volume inflection this morning between 32 and 36, and once it cleared that, it was obvious it was going to go again. And yet, like you've seen me show this before, it has an insane amount of overhead supply. I mean, we're almost at no buying anymore, and this thing is at over 108. I barely see something that high, which means the overhead supply is super inflated. The only difference is everyone is positive. No one needs to unload. And not only that, this thing is super low float, more befitting of a short thesis company, because so it's super low float and has a lot of institutional holders. They have no interest to ever sell. They're just happy with where it is, and I'm sure shorts try to short it many times over and over again at every dollar balance, 40, 41, 42, and even to 45, and after hours is still rocketed. So I would expect this to pop. I would look for a standard deviation move of at least 0.5. I want something that shows that this is irregular volume and a pop, and then I would look to short. The reason why I'm only thinking about it today is because I have a very strong no low float all-time high short until third day. So if it's putting in all-time highs every single day, it's just clearing out all the shorts, at the very least you have to wait until third day. So tomorrow's third day. I'm interested to see if there's going to be profit taking and if the shorts are going to be on the same mindset as me and start shorting this thing. So really, those are my three biggest: MGEN, UUU, SRRK. I'm also looking at CYH. This thing is looking like a good short because it has a very high float. It also put in great news. It also is an all-time high, and I also would not have shorted it on the first day. I might think about shorting it on the second day, just because it's big float, but at the same time this could be just on watch and it could be for the third day short, just like SRRK. And again, the next one with amazing news is pins. Same situation, putting in all-time highs. I mean, this thing has been bullish since April, just straight up. However, as you see from standard deviation, this move in volume was a little unorthodox, and it was in after hours. So again, tomorrow is the first day. There's going to be a lot of shorts trapped, a lot of happy investors who are going to say, well, I'm not ever selling this thing until it goes to 100. and so probably will not short the first day, just like the other one, but I'm having this on watch just in case if it breaks down or some other news comes out, because again it has a crazy overhead supply. So on a red day, this SRRK, CYH, they all have a massive overhead supply, but they're all massively positive. However, on the first red day, people will start to take profits. So usually not before the third day. So that could be the play for all three of those, but I'm going to have all three on the watch. There's a few others that I'm looking at, but they're a little more risky, so I'm not even going to get into those. For example, BVXV. Yeah, it's a trash company. They get completely obliterated because everything they do suck. All of their biotech products failed, and they went from $40 to $3. However, people love dead cat bounces, and even though this will be a good potential short, if it goes above WeVap and doesn't break 4.2, the thing is, people might think, oh, here we go, it's bouncing, and then the gap to fill is 35, so risk reward is not really on your side. It's almost better that if it breaks down and puts in another low that's higher at like $3 and then go long, but it's a trash company, so I wouldn't go long. So complicated situation with this one. And AUVI, kind of a similar situation. Super low float, almost non-existent. Again, you would think if it pops, you short it, but the float is so low that it could get manipulated easily, and they have some deal that kills surface pathogens in hospitals. So anything tied to COVID could be volatile. Usually I would just say, hey, if this hits somewhere into the recognized volume area, anywhere above 10, maybe above 950 to clear out the WeVap, great short. But low float, COVID situation, this could go nuts. So I will probably stay focused on the first three options, which is UUU, MGEN, and SRRK, third day short. Bam.